All right. So today we are going to be talking about sets, map, and error handling because most of this error handling, you always deal with error a lot. Most of the when you are calling API, it's not for API alone too. Like sometimes that maybe you make mistake in the code or something is going on, or you are trying to access what you are not supposed to access, or the data you are getting back is not in the form that you're expecting it to be, you can get error. But you getting error doesn't mean the application should stop. The application should still work. Uh, so which means your application should be able to handle the error that can occur in your program or whatever app you are trying to build there. But before we get to the error handling, I want us to talk about set and math, which are quite useful there when you are dealing with you have a list of data, but you don't want to have a duplicate, and you don't want to do a lot of work for you to start looking for whether this data is already there or is not there and so forth like that. Because what you do when you are dealing with array and you need that your array should not contain duplicate, you have to be the one that have to do all this work yourself by checking whether the data is already in the array. If it is there, you don't add, but if it's not there, then you put it there. But instead of you doing something like that, we can use set because that's what the set is all about. Mathematically, you know that sets can only contain unique items. So the same thing here too, you can use the set to hold data that are unique. So you can't have duplicate data. So when you need a duplicate data, which is what this is what you always do most of the time, you go with your normal array there. But if the data you want to work with, you don't want to have a duplicate here, we can use sets to handle that kind of a scenario there. So, and how do you create sets in JavaScript? How do you create sets in JavaScript? How do you assign value to sets? And at the same time, how do you check whether the set have a particular value or not? And how can you clear a set? Or how can you remove a particular item from a set? All these action too, it is something that you can do when you are dealing with array in JavaScript. But some of the action that you want to carry out or some of the operation you want to carry out on array, they are not that straightforward. You need to do some extra work before you can have that functionality. And this set is really useful anytime you want to have a unique set of data, and you can add to the list or remove without you caring about whether it's there or it's not in the list there. So, and to create sets in JavaScript, a set is a class, so which means you need to instantiate objects out of it. And for you to create a set, for example, I can have my items here, and we are going to have this new set. So set is a class. How do I know it's a class? You can see that we have the new keyword beside it there. So it's a class. And once you create an instance from the set, then you can start adding any necessary information that you want to pass inside the set. So this is how to create empty set that is not containing any data right now. But how do we add item to our set? So we can call the object that was created from this set, and on it there's going to be some method that we can use. And one of the method here is add, which is what you can use to add item to your set. We have the as that you can use to check whether that your set contain a particular item or not. We have the size, which is something like the array length that tell you the number of items that you have inside the set. We have delete, which is really useful compared to array that you can only delete from the start or the end easily. But when you want to remove in between, you are going to do a lot of work to remove the item. But with set, you just use this delete and you pass the items that you want to delete, and it's going to remove it from the list that you have there. And if you want to do something like this with array, it's quite easy when you are deleting from the start, which you are going to be using shift, or you can use pop to delete from the end of the array. But when you want to remove in between, then you have to firstly do a lot of stuff before you can remove there. So let's add item to our set here, and you can add anything that you want, whether it's JavaScript here doesn't care about the data you are putting inside your collection there. So you can put any items that you want inside the set. It can be objects, it can be function, or anything that you want to put inside your set, and it's going to add them into the list. So I'm going to add this one, which is going to be testing, or I can just use my name like this and a lot of other items that you want to add inside your set. And you can console log it out, and we're going to have the set with these two items. And don't forget, set is always unique. Since I already add raster here, I can't just go to another line and add multiple raster. This one is not going to work. It's only two items you are still going to have there. Even though I'm adding this 4 items, but we still have 2 because the data that I'm adding right now, they are just a duplicate of this first item that we have on line 3 here. So set is really useful anytime you have a data and you know that your data is going to be unique. Because imagine you have a collection of cards where the user, or you have a list of items by the right, and you want the user to be able to pick from that list into the item that is going to be on the left side. And you know that assuming the item on this left here, it's something that the user can click multiple times. And anytime the user click on any one of the item, you want to add it to the box on the left. And this is what I'm trying to say here. We have 2 boxes. Assuming we have 2 boxes like this, or we have 2 lists of items. So inside this box, this is where we're going to have all the lists that the user can pick from. So we have all these options that we want to list out. And anytime the user click on any of the options, the one that the user click on, it will be added to this second box here, like this. But the item we want the user to pick from here is just one that we need it. Because anytime you click on this and you are using array, it's always going to add them to the list, which is going to create a duplicate data. But instead of you using array to hold the information that they are adding to the left side, or to the right side here, we can use the set, because we know that anytime they click on the same item from here, the set will always have only one copy of whatever they pick from the UI. And this thing here can be a list of students that you want to add to maybe you have a program that you want to do, and you want to select the student that is going to attend, or that is going to be participated in their occasion there. So instead of us using array here to represent the data, because if you use array and your function here is always adding to that array by pushing to the end of it, it will always add the same name every time. So if I'm clicking on this first name, if I click it the first time, the second and the third time, it will always add it to this second item here. But that's not what we want. Anytime you click on the name here, it will only be added if it's not already on the list that we have on the right side. If it is there, we don't need to add it again. We just don't do anything because we already have that name. And we can use it to represent this kind of a data set, where you are going to have, for example here, just like what we are doing here, we have a list of names like this, where I'm going to have the raster like this. I'm going to have James, assuming this is the list of our students. Then we have another set of data. For this data now, we want to have a unique item there, which is going to be the names of students that are going to go for the competition there. Or we can just say students or selected students. So for example here, selected student. For this selected student that we have here, we don't want to have a duplicate data. So here we can create our set. And later on the screen, where the user are going to be clicking on this item, which is going to be adding them to the list here. Anytime they pick on a name that is already on the list, we don't need to do anything. What is going to be there is that the user will still be seeing the one that has been put inside the set, because we know that if you click on raster multiple times, it will only add it once because we are dealing with a set. And how do you use the set, or how do you add item to the set? So from this list of students now, we can pick. So I can just pick the first student there by just using this selected student like this, then add. And what I want to add here, I want to add a list of students at 0 like this. And once this thing is added to the list, then we are going to have the items under our this selected student. Now imagine that, or we are assuming that the user now click, because this one is just to mimic that the user is clicking on this item on the screen, and that we add the same name again. You see that we only have one copy of it compared to we using array. Assuming it's array that we are using here now, instead of using the set, and anytime this item is added, if you don't want the user to add to the list, then you have to write some code to make sure that the name is not already in the list. So if you want to use this one now, instead of us using this add, we can't use the add. So what we have to use is push like this, which is going to be the list at 0. Again, we can do it for the second item. But here is not going to do what we want because we don't want to have a duplicate data. But using array, once this thing is added, as you can see, we have the same name, which is something that it can happen on the screen when you have a list of items. And from that list of items, the user can pick from it, or they can click on that name. And once they click on the name, it will add it to the list that we have on the right hand side. But some people, they can start clicking on that item multiple times, and you see that it will keep adding it to the right hand side. But instead of us using array to represent the data of the selected student, then we can use set, which is going to handle some of this unnecessary logic that we need to do before we want to add the item to the list. Because this one now we need to check first before they can add. Instead of us adding directly like this, we can now create a function that will check whether that list is already there or not. If it is there, we don't do anything, but if it's not there, that's where we add it. But instead of us putting all these logics together, we have all this in JavaScript already by just using the set. And once you use set, then it's going to take care of all this thing for you. Even if it is objects that you want to add, it doesn't need to be normal string like this. It can be object. For example, here we have the users, and it's going to be array of a user where we have the name to be raster like this, age is 20, and again too, we are going to have another data here, which is going to be another name. So the name is going to be this, and the age, let me use 21 like this. And the same thing that we did with this normal data, we can do it with object too. And if it sees that object is already there, then there's no need of adding it again to the list. So instead of us using this list of names, what we can do is to use users at 0 like this. And as you can see, at the same time, it's only saving one of them. It's not saving two. Even though I'm adding it 2 times, yeah, like it's being added 2 times, but it's only having one copy of it because it's seeing it as the same object. Since it's the same object, there is no need for us to be adding this item into the list again. And we don't need to add we don't need to add unnecessary code to just have this functionality. So anywhere you have a list of items and you know that you always want this thing to be unique, what I would advise you always go to is set compared to array. But if you still want to use array, then you can write the logic yourself by saying, okay, this thing we check. Do you have this item? If it is there, then don't add it. But if it's not there, then we don't add it. But when you are dealing with objects, there's a lot of things you have to do because this is object here. You can't. How do you look for object in array? What you do on your array now, what we have to do is user then dot find. Then after the find, and this find is really kind of expensive when you are dealing with a long data. Assuming you have a bit like you have 1 million data now. See, this find, what it's going to do is that it will keep going through the list one by one until it finds the one that matches this condition. And it's when it finds it that it's going to stop. So which means now, if the item you are looking for is already is at the end and you have like 1 million lists, it's going to take a lot of time before you get the result. When you are doing with it with simple data, maybe like 20 lists of students, 30, 100, and 200, 1000, you will not see anything if you are dealing with a system that is really fast. But when you are dealing with a large data set and you are using this find, you always see this kind of a slow in your application, that it will wait for a bit of seconds before you see the result or before you get the result back, because the way find work, it will keep iterating each one, or it will keep going over each one of them until it's find the one that matches the condition. And if none of them is matching the condition, it will get to the end. Now imagine that the list is really large. So using array to hold this kind of information or to create this kind of a logic yourself, it's going to take a lot of things out of your application when you are dealing with a large data set. But when you're dealing with simple data set, you can actually use your array. It will work, and you write your logic with find to look for the user that matches this. And once you find it, then if it is there, you know that it will either return null, or whether return null or the data that is find there. For example, here now, once you console log out this one, we should get that first user back, which is going to give us the data. What is it saying there? Okay, this one is not supposed to be here. So save it and run it again, and as you can see, we have raster. Now imagine I use something that is not there before. You see that we are going to get this undefined or no. So we know that the data is not there. And since the data is not there, then we are going to add. But the problem with find is that the way it works is that it will keep going over each one of them until it sees the one that matches this condition. And if your data is really large, it's bad to use array to do something like this. So these are kind of the optimization that you're going to be doing when you are dealing with a list that is really long, and you know that you want to quickly find item in your data. How do you do it? That's a better way to handle this one, that we're going to be talking about map after these sets there like that. When you need to quickly find item in your data, you can use map instead of this array or objects like that, that you start looping through the stuff one by one, and when the list is really large, it will impact your application. You start seeing that the stuff will start slowing down until, like, before you get the result, take a few seconds, or depending on the number of data you have, to give you the results that you want on the page. And you want your application to be faster yes, because you don't want your application to slow and you start losing people or complaining that they can't use your application there. But when you are dealing with small application, you don't need to start doing all these unnecessary optimization. The only time you start introducing them is when you see that your normal array is not working or it starts slowing down. That's when you can start bringing all this one into your application, because they only shine when you are dealing with a large data set there like that. And as you can see, our this particular set we can add. So the same thing that we are doing with this array to look for a particular item, we can do it too using our set. And we don't need to start looking through the stuff like this. What we can do is to just use the method that we have on this our set. So set have this as that you can quickly use to check whether a particular data is there or not like that. So for example, let me cut out this one and let me console log out the stuff, this semicolon again, save it like that. And as you can see, it's telling us that the data is part of the list. And if you look at the way I passed it here, I passed the entire stuff, not that we are looping through the item and we are using a name to look for it, because everything that we put there is just this object. So we put this entire object, and since we want to look for it, that's the same object we are going to pass to it to look for it. If it is there, it will return true. If it's not there, then we know that we don't have that particular user in the list. Maybe you need to check somewhere that, hey, is this particular user being added to the list or it has been added to the set? So you can use as to check whether that person is there or is not there. So the person is not there, maybe you always want to, like, for example, that selected one that we are talking about here. So from this list, even if we don't pick this particular user, we still want to add that person. So how do we check whether the person is already there or not? So we can use the ask. So if the ask is returning true, we know that that person is already there. There is no need for us adding to the list. But if they are not there, then we are going to hide it. We are going to add the stuff behind the scene and we'll send it to the API along with the list of the selected user there. And with set, it really make it possible for us to work with this in easily, and it's faster compared to we using find on array. But don't forget, when you are dealing with small data sets, you can use your array. You won't see any, like, there won't be any problem. The only time you start seeing problem is when you are dealing with a large data set that array needs to go over each one of them are like that. So that's where you start seeing problem. And when you start seeing all those problems, you can introduce set. But don't forget, set is only useful where you want your data to be unique. If you know that the data you want to work with is not unique, or you can add multiple of that item there, you cannot use set. So set is only useful when you want to have a list of items, but the list or the items you want to have inside your list always going to be unique there. So you are going to be using the set. So you create your set, and once you are done creating your set, anytime you want to add the item, then you can call the add method, and you pass whatever data you want to put inside it. It can be normal data type, or it can be object. You can put anything inside it, and it will not allow duplicates if you pass that same thing again inside that your set there. And there's some other method. We have other method too that you can use or that are useful under the set. The other one that I see that is useful here is we have the clear, or we have this delete. And what is this clear? This one is to remove everything that you have in your set. Maybe after you've already called the API, so you want to clear the data that the user put on that right side, so that they can start again with another set of user. So we can clear the list that we have in our set there. So, and to clear everything that you have in your set, what you can do is to call this clear, and it's going to remove everything that is inside it. And the next time we call this our selected student now, is not going to have anything. On line 23, we are going to have the items, which I can just add more to the list. So let me add the second user too. So on this line, let me comment out all this one first. So after this 4 lines here, we should have 2 items. Even though we are adding 3 items, but because this first one and the second one are the same thing, so it's only going to have 1 copy of it. But now, after we've already got the data and we processed everything we need to do, we send it to the backend, we've returned, like we've gotten the result back. The next thing is for us to wipe out everything that is there, so that the user can start again or move to the next set of our students, and they can start adding them to the right side. So we can call this clear, which is going to wipe off everything that we have inside. And currently here we only have 2 items based on the size. And once this line 29 is done, you see that we don't have anything again. So the set is not empty. So before that line, the set is having 2 items. But after we clear it, as you can see, it will remove everything that is inside it, and the size is going to be 0. And once the size is 0, it's just like the length on array. When it is 0, it means we don't have anything inside your set, in case you need to do some logic based on whether there is item there or no item there. So the size is what you'll be using when you are dealing with a set, and you can get it to under your set there by just using size, and it's going to give you whatever the size of the item. If it is greater than 0, just know that you have items inside it. It can be 1 or 2 or 3 and so forth like that. But if the size is 0, it means there is no item inside the set. And if this line is disabled here, we should have 2 items, or the size should be 2, because we've added 2 items on this line, and it acts like a length, but here it is called size. And apart from this, what if we want to remove a particular item? And again, before I do that, so let me add this other one, which is going to be this list names, which is going to be Faatihat. And once this thing is added there, okay, S is missing. Let me save it. And as you can see here, we have the 2 objects that we are adding, and at the same time we have the normal data set that we are putting into the list. But now I want to remove this one. So how do I remove it? So to remove item from your set, you can use delete. So selected item, then delete. What do you want to delete? Then you pass whatever value you want to delete there. And as you can see from here, it will either return true or false, whether based on whether that item is being deleted or not. For example, here now, let me console log it out, and we pass something that is not inside the list. So assuming we pass something that is not inside the list. So for example, here I just passed testing or test, and once this one is done, we should have false. And based on this, that you know that the item you are trying to delete is not inside the list, or it can't delete it. So it will return false if that item is not found there. So if the item is not found, you are going to get false. And based on this now, you can do some UI or bring out some UI item by telling them that what they are trying to do is wrong, or something is not right, because in our list we don't have test, but you want to delete test from it, so it's not making sense. So it's going to return false. But assuming we pass something that we have there, for example, let me pass this list names at which one did I use? Okay, at 1, and run it here, and as you can see, we have true. So which means we can find the item, and the item has been deleted from the list of selected students, and we can console log out the stuff so that we see that I already have it here. So let me just duplicate it and move it down, run the stuff, and now we should only have 2 items. We started with 3 items, but now we have 2 because the last one has been deleted. And as you can see, this one is not based on index. When you are dealing with your set, you can delete any item you want. This one, it make it easier to delete item. It's not like the array that it's easier to delete at the end compared to delete at the starting or anywhere in the array. When you are deleting at the end, it's always faster for array. Anytime you're removing item from the list at the end, array is always faster compared to the other one because it's easier to delete at the end. But when you need to remove data in between there, it's will be really long so for array to delete, because it needs to adjust the list. When you delete, you have 3 items and you now remove the second one, it needs to adjust the list so that everything is still going to be perfect there. But when you remove at the end, there is no need of you adjusting anything because that's the last item, so we are not adjusting anything. Array is always faster there when you are deleting from the end. But when you need to remove anywhere in the list, the array is not fast compared to the other one, like the map or the set that you can use to represent your data there. But don't forget, set is only useful when you are dealing with data that you don't want duplicate. If you want the data to have duplicate, you're still going to use your array, or you can use map when you want to use key and value to represent the data there like that. So these are the common stuff that you can do with sets, and sets you can use it now to represent your data anywhere you don't want any duplicate in the list. For example, now assuming we have this number of we have this list here, so we have this number which is going to be this 1 2 3, and this your array, you want to quickly remove duplicates, you can use set. So how do we do it? It's just by us creating the set like this, and once this thing is created, you pass, because you can actually supply the details into it. Right here, we started with empty set, but your set can actually receive the data on the line that you are creating it. Instead of using the add like this, you can just pass the array of data that you want, because sets always work along with array because they are kind of related to each other. The difference between them is just that sets don't hold duplicate data there. So, and you can pass array into your set, and it's going to convert it to a set of data instead of you calling this add every line to add each one of the items. So instead of us doing it like this, we can just pass the user directly into this our list, and it's going to have the data at once. And that's what is going on this line, where we are passing all the numbers. Or if you want, you can just create the array directly from here and you pass the number. But since we have it already in a variable, then we are passing it like this. And what it's going to do is that it will convert everything to a data that is going to be used by our set. But don't forget, any duplicate will be removed. Now, this is the data. These are the user. But here, we are having the unique one. We don't want any duplicate in our code. And you know that your data you have in your array can have duplicate. What do? You pass it into the set, and it's only going to extract out all those ones that are not duplicate. So it's going to pick all the items here and leave all the duplicates out of it. And what I mean by that is that it's only one copy for each one of the item that you are going to have in your set there. And from here, we can console log out this unique number. So the number is having this 1, 2, 2, 3, 4, 4, and 5. For now, our set is only containing 5 items. The list that we have there, the array we have, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we have 7 items, but in our set, we're having 5 items. And if you want, you can now convert it back to array. And this one is what I normally use in some places. Anytime I have a list of items, and that items you want to get the unique one. So this is the simple way you can quickly do it. You have your array, then from there you pass it to the set, and once set receive the data, it will only give you the unique. Then this unique item too, I can convert it back to array. And how do you convert it back to array is just by spreading the set. So because array and set, they really work along with each other. You can use them together to kind of work with the data that deal with duplicate or not duplicate here. So here, from the array, we convert it to set, so which is going to remove anything that is duplicate here. It's only going to have one copy. Then that same set that we have, we convert it back to array. This is set, this is array, and we are now getting array back inside this our x. But this x now is going to be the same thing as this set, but it is not set again, is now array. So this unique number, and as you can see here, it is set. But for this one now, it is array, but they have the same number of data. We started with this data, which is this one that have duplicate entries. And these duplicate entries, you can't just go through them one by one. Imagine you are getting the data from the backend. There is no way you know the data that is coming back, but you know that the data might contain duplicate, and you want to remove all those duplicate out. So what do? You can quickly convert it to set. Then once you get the unique data, then you now return it back to the array like this. Another way of doing this stuff is by using filter. But don't forget, when you are using filter, the way all these things work is that they are going to look through your item one by one. So here we can actually return by creating unique. So we can have unique. So these unique numbers too now, if you want to do it directly, you can just use these numbers, then filter. Because filter, it will only return the data that matches your condition. But don't forget, it will go through each item one by one. So it all depends on which one you want to use, but these are different ways of doing the same thing. So yeah, I will receive all the number, and the only one I want is the one that is not already in the list. So how do we do that? We need to check whether this one now does not include, because this thing have the stuff. So now we need to check whether this item is not already in where we want to. And as you can see again too here, there is a problem, because this one will not work, because the number I have here right now, it's going to see it there, because it's going to see that the number is already there. So this one will not work. What I need to do is that the data that I'm getting back, I need to save them in one place first. Then from there, I will check whether it's not part of it and so forth like that, which is going to take a lot of code and something to really achieve the same stuff. But instead of you wasting time like this, what we can just do, convert it to set. Then the set will only extract out the unique one, and from there you can transform it back into array. And this x now is only going to have the data that is not duplicate, or the one that are not duplicate. So we only are going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, not 1, 2, 2, 3, 4, 4, and 5 are there like that. The sets can be used for something like this. Another thing we can do is, maybe you have a page that you want to track. You have a page, or you have one particular item you want to track, whether it's already inside that set or not, or you want to add something into it. You can use set, because you know that thing you can only add it once. You can add it multiple times. But anytime you need a data set that is always going to be unique, set is always the right candidate compared to array. But you can still use array. But if you are using array, you have to be the one that will manage the duplicate data there by checking whether it is there or is not there. If it's not there, add it. If it is there, then just forget about it, or you show error message to the user that you are trying to add something that is already inside the item. But if you don't care, you can use sets, and anytime you try to add anything, they will not see it again there, because it's only one that we're expecting they can add multiple items into our list there. And another one that we have here apart from set is going to be the map. So we have map too, which is like the opposite of object. You know, in JavaScript, you can create your object. For example, like this user here, you can create object user, and inside this user, we're going to have the name of the user, we're going to have the age of the user, we're going to have the level of the user, and a lot of other items that you want to put under the stuff. But don't forget, when you are dealing with objects, the key of object have to be string. Everything that you are using as the key, they will get converted to string. Even though I'm using one there right now, or everything that you are seeing here, everything is going to get converted to string. Even though I'm using number 1, but when you want to have access to this data, you can't use 1. You have to use string 1. So instead of you doing like this, we can actually use map, because map work like objects. But another thing with object here is that the order that you arrange them here doesn't mean that same order you are going to get it when you are, calling the data, or the key that you pass there, the way you insert it, that doesn't mean that's the same way JavaScript is going to arrange it later on when you are trying to get item from it. And as you can see, look at what we have on the screen. I started with name, but here now it's starting with this one. The second one is age, is on the second one, the level and the name. But anytime you are dealing with this your particular object, the order that you insert the data doesn't mean that same order that JavaScript is going to create the object. It doesn't work like that every time, or most of the time said the order will never be the same thing. But what if you want the order that you input all this data inside your object, you want it to retain it, and at the same time too, you can use any key to represent your data. Because another thing is that whatever you want to use as the key is something that can be converted to string. If JavaScript cannot convert it to string, you cannot use it as key. So anything that cannot be used as string, you can't use it as the key of your data inside the object. But instead of us doing this, we can actually use map. And the map, for example, before I even get to the map, let me access the data first. So console, so let me log out the user, and here now I want to access the one. But look at it now, as you can see, it's generating error, because whatever you want to use to access your data, whatever you're using as key, it will always be string. And as you can see here, it is calling it string. Whereas what I use here is number. But you can actually do it like this, which is going to be string. But with map, you can use anything as key of your data. So with map, you can use anything as key in your data there. And again too, the order that you insert them, that same order is going to bring out the details back for you. The same order that you arrange it, that's the same order you always get when you are dealing with map. So, and in order for you to have access to this, we have to use the other method here by using square, and we'll pass 1. And this is the only time it will work. You can't just come here and say you want to use .1. It will not work, because it has already converted this one to string. And in order for you to have access to it, you need to put in a quote. And this is the only way you can do it when you are dealing with a number there like that. But instead of us having it like this, we can actually have our user map. And to create a map, you see the same thing. We are going to call this new map. So this new map, as you can see here, is just a class. And then it's going to create a new map for us, which is going to instantiate the object, and the object is going to be here. But don't forget, the object is just a map, which comes with some goodies too that we can use, like that set. So if you want to add anything into the stuff, as you can see here, these are different goodies that we can use too. So we have the set. For the set there, we are using add. But here, it is known as set. And what do you want to set? You are going to have the key, and you are going to have the value that you want to set. It works like your object. The difference there is that this one now, you can use anything as key. So you can use number. The way you specify the key, that's the same way you are going to use it to access the value later on. When you are dealing with normal objects, whatever you are using as a key will get converted to string. Even if I use true here, so it look like normal the same, but to JavaScript there, this true is just string. But if you use the same thing with map, whatever stuff you use, that's the same way it's going to use it to represent your data. It will never convert anything to string. The way the data type that you passed as the key, that's the same thing is going to use there. But you might be thinking, what's the advantage of this thing? The advantage here is that you can actually use objects here too to represent a key. For example, now you have a user that you want to keep tracking their score. Instead of you using their name, maybe you have a list. So we have a list like the users scores like this. And for these scores, you want to be using their name. So here you are going to have raster 100 Faatihat like this. But instead of us extracting the name out from that object, from the list of objects you have there, we don't need to do that. We can pass the object directly as the key, and we'll put whatever value that we want there. And anytime you want to have access to the value, just use the same key, or just use the same object, and it will return the data back for you. Not that you have to do extra work to extract that the name or the key from the object. You now create another thing again. No, we don't need to do that. Just use the object directly as a key, and you put whatever value that you want there like that. And here we can quickly pass a key here. For example, like the way we have it at the top there, we have the name. So here now we need to pass it the data type correctly, and the name is going to be the same thing that we have up there. But now we want to add another thing again, which is going to be age. And what do we use for the age up there? The age is going to be 21. The next one that we have on the list is the level, and we put let me use this to 10. And the last item that I want to add is now 1 now. So now I'm not using string again, I'm using 1. And what is the 1 representing there? Is representing home. So the way we pass it here, that's the same way the map is going to give us the data back later on. If you want to have access to this home, the way you pass this data here, that's the same way you are going to use later on to have access to the data. And here now we can console log our user map, and you see that we still have the info, and the order that you supply it, that's the same order you are going to have it in the map. As you can see, the order that you arrange it, that's the same order is going to always represent everything. So it's not like the objects that it can change based on whatever items that you are putting inside the list. This one will always represent it the same way that you create your object. But how do we have access to our data? When we want to have access to our data from the object, if it is just normal string, you can quickly use dots and you have access to the data. But that's not how you do it when you are dealing with object. So when you are dealing with map, to have access to anything on the map, we need to use its get method. And this get method, you just pass the key that you use. The same way that you define the key, that's the same way you are going to pass it to this get. And from here now, we are going to have whatever data that particular key is holding inside the object there. So it's going to return it back to us. And as you can see here, we have Faatihat as the name. So here I can remove this one, pass the level, and you see that it's going to return the level for us. But what if I pass 1? But this is not the way I actually created it. Look at the way we created the stuff. But now I'm putting in a quote. It will not work because they are not the same key. And as you can see here, it is giving us undefined because the key is just number 1. It's not string 1. So they are not the same. The way you create the key when you are inserting your data, that's the same way you are going to pass it. So which means map doesn't change the key that you pass. The way you pass it, that's the same way you are going to use it. So for us to get the data, we have to pass it directly. And as you can see here, we have the data. And just like what I mentioned before, I can now create a map of score that I'm going to be using the object to represent the data. So, and that object is just the list of users. For example here, the user that we have at the top here. So let me just borrow it. So let me just borrow all these users here. And in our game, or you build a game, and that your game, you want to keep tracking the score of the user that are playing that game. Maybe your game is multiplayer, and you have the user that log in or that are playing that game at that particular time, and you have them in this your array of the online user or the user that are in that particular room playing the game. So, and you want to keep tracking their score. What you can do here, maybe you can just quickly add it to the list here to do this stuff. But you want to have a different object to keep tracking, because that object now you want to be able to remove or add, because the data that is here, you should be able to remove it when the user leave the game, and when the user join again, you should be able to, or when another user join, you should be able to add that score, not to their object, but a separate object that is keeping tracking of that score that you have there. And based on that now, you can do the leaderboard where it's okay, this is the person that have highest score, so you'll be at the top, the second person will follow, and so forth like that. So here what we can do is to create the map. You can use object too to do this, but the problem with object is that we have to extract out the name of the user so that we can use it as a key, and then we put the score. But instead of us doing it like that, we can use the object and that entire object to represent the key, and the data we want to use, we just put it in front of it. And anytime we need to access anything later on, we just call it by that object, and it will give us the data. Because map, you can use anything as key. It doesn't care. It's not like the object that everything have to be string. All the key must be string. You can't use anything. It will always be string there, like that. So here now we can just create our scoreboard like this, and this our scoreboard is going to be new map. Again too, you can pass the data directly here, but for now I want to be using the add method there. So what do we need to do? We want to add these two users into it. So we can just say this scoreboard like that, which is going to be this set, and as you can see, we are adding the first user and the score is 100. The same way too, we can add the second user. But if you notice here, I'm not extracting their name. I'm passing the object directly. It's the entire object. So it's going to use this object here to represent the value. Let me change it. This is 280 or 2000, whatever stuff like this. So this now is going to use this entire object to represent this data. So for the first one, is going to use this entire object to represent the data. And later on, when you need to get it, you just use that object too to call it. It's not like the normal object that everything you want to use as key must be string. Anything that is not string, you cannot use it. But with map, you can quickly do something like this. And another advantage of map is that it's really faster when you are deleting or adding to your data there. So because this thing now is something that we want to be able to remove any score at a particular time and add it. And imagine your application you are building, multiple users can connect to play the same game. So you can have different people from different countries or in the same country, but you can have a lot of people there. And you don't want your application to start slowing down when you are removing the score or you are adding to the list. With objects or when you are dealing with map, it's really faster there when you want to add to the list or you want to remove from that your data set there. So when you're dealing with map, it's kind of faster compared to object. But when you're dealing with simple stuff or normal data, you can go with your object. It will work. What you always do first is object. The only time I know you always want to go with map is when you have a big data set and you want to be able to quickly remove or add to the list there. You always use map compared to object because it's not that easy to delete from object, or it's not that easy to quickly check whether something is inside your object or not. You have to write some code to do other things. But with map, it have all this method out of the box. Just pass into it and it will tell you whether that thing is there or not, or whether that particular score or whether that particular user is part of the score or not, and so forth like that. And here now, we can console log our scoreboard. So we can console log our scoreboard like this, and we are going to have the two data set there. And as you can see here, can you see the key? The object is what we are using to add as key, and the value is this one. And if you expand it, can you see the key? The key is just normal object. And for the second one too, the key is another object which is holding this value. And if you want to have access to any one of them later on, then it's that same key that you pass that you are going to be using there. So if you want to have access to any of the data, we can just use this our scoreboard now. Then we can get. What do we want to get? We want to get the score for the first user. And that first user now is going to be this. And from there, it's going to return the data that matches it. As you can see, what we use is object. We don't need to start extracting any info from that object. Just use the entire object to act as key, and you save the data you want. So if you need something like this, you always go with object, because or map, because it's really powerful in this kind of a scenario when you need to use something else to represent key instead of you using normal data to represent your items there like that. So when you want to have a map, just create a map. You can have it empty like this, or you can just pass it directly. For example, here this is going to be new map, and this map here you can pass because it works like object, so it needs the key and the value. If you want to do it line by line, you can use the set like this, but instead of using set, you can pass array of data set there. So the same thing that we have. So here now we have array. This array is now containing a nested array. The first item inside that nested array is your key. The second one is the data. So this is the first data, but the key is name, the value is Faatihat. The second item in the list, the key is age, the value is 21, and you can continue like that depending on the number of data you want to put. So if you know the data already and you want to transform your array, this is how you can do it, where you have the key and you have the value, and you can pass the stuff. Because if you have the object and you don't want to be doing it one by one like this, you need to transform it into what this thing can understand here, and this is how you can pass the data directly. You have array, and inside that array you are going to have other array with the first item, which is going to be the key, the second one is a value, and this one too is going to create that our user for us instead of us using the set to set the value one by one. And as you can see here, we have the name Faatihat, age 21, level 200, and now we can get any of the data by using the x.get, and what are we getting there? We are getting the age, and it's going to return the value for us if we have it there. And if you don't have it, then it will be undefined because we don't have the value. For example, age 1, once you have access to it, as you can see, it's going to be undefined because we don't have that data. And again, too, this one too have as that you can use to check whether the particular value is there or not. You cannot do this with objects. The way you do with objects is to just use your the way to do it with objects is by doing something like this, by saying user as this one, and from there you negate or you convert it to you can convert it to boolean like this. So this thing will either be true or false if this thing is there or not. But this one is still not practical, because what if you're going to have, if the data you have there is 0, it can cause problem. But this one is not looking for data, it's looking for whether that key is there or not. And if you want to deal with object too, another way of doing it is by getting all the key, which is going to give you that array. Then you now check whether it is including that key or not, like that. That's another way of handling it by dealing with objects. For example, let me have this user here. If you want to do it, so user, we're going to have this const user, which is going to be the user as 0. So now if I want to check whether this particular user have a specific key, what I can just do is to do objects like this. There's a lot of work to do here. Then dot keys. Then from there you select, you pass the object into it. So this one will give you an array of all the keys. Then from there you can now use your include, and you check whether it includes particular key you are looking for. For example, here I'm checking whether it's having name or not, and don't need to assign it to any variable. What I can just do here is to print it out directly. So console log out like this. So with map, this is what you just need to do. But with normal object, look at what we need to do. Now imagine the key or the number of items you have inside that your object is really large. This thing can go wide here, like it can be thousands depending on the number of page you have in your data. But here now, it will only for the map, it will only focus on the item you pass inside it. But for this one, it will get all the key first. Then after getting all the keys, it will now keep checking whether it's have it or not, which is going to be really slow your application down when you are dealing with a large data set. When you are not dealing with a large data set, you will not see all this problem. It's when you started working with it. For example, now assuming you are the one that built Facebook, you know how many people that are on Facebook. So you cannot be doing some stuff when you have a large number of data sets. So you have to use another way which is faster compared to the one you be using there, because array have its own limits too. When you put it a lot of data inside it, it needs to process the stuff by using find or filter. All those things they used to go through the list of the item, which is not something you want. When you have a big data, you only want to focus on the one that you are looking for, and that's what this as is going to do. It's only going to check this one directly. But with this, we won't see any problem because the data is not that big. It's just simple stuff. And as you can see, it's returning that we don't have, this one is true, but now this one is false because we don't have age 1. But if I put age down, then that one too should return true because it is part of the map that we have there. But doing the same thing with objects, look at what I have to write to get the same functionality. So the only time you'll be using map, again, the only time you use map is when you are dealing with a big data set, and that data set that you are dealing with, you can remove or add to that list or to that data there. So you want to be able to quickly add or remove without you having any impact, or you want to check whether a particular item is there or not without having any impact, you always go with map compared to object, because map really shine in that kind of a world when you are dealing with a data that you need to quickly get something from it, or you need to quickly remove from the list of items that we have there like that. That's how this thing works. So, and I think this is where I'll be stopping because I don't want this thing to join with another class. But in our next class there, I will be talking more of this error handling, and I will join it with this because this one shouldn't take me more time to explain because nothing much on it like that. But the application is what we are going to focus on there on it there. So most of this one, but this recursive, because that is really practical. This recursive is something that you might need anytime you want to do something like this. For example, look at this sidebar or look at this component here. And this component that you see here, how can you build something like this? So you have this item here, but you can see the way you have this item, some of the nested items too can have that same look. And again, to click on revenue, you see that they have the same pattern. This is the first item, this is the nested one, and this is the nested one. And as you can see here, it's the same component that is rendering them. So how do you convert, how do you create something like this from a single component? That's where this, you can use the power of this recursive function, which is a function that can call itself. So from there now, you create a component, but that component can call itself when it sees that the nested, like that item that you are rendering, it have its own nested item. So once you see that it have its own nested item, it's going to call itself again. Again, that one too, if you see that it have its own nested item, it will keep calling itself until it gets to the one that did not have the item. And when it's done, it will not join everything together there. And I always use this thing a lot. Anytime I'm building sidebar like this, and it can have this nested item, what I always use is that recursive, because I don't need to start doing or start calling the stuff myself, because what you need to send to me is the configuration of this stuff, which is going to look something like this. Maybe you have a list of all this data or for the sidebar in your application there, and from there you can just bring all of them. Then from there you create the HTML code that is going to generate the data. I already have this in prepared, the one we're going to be using later on. For example, we have this list of menu. So we have this configuration for our menu. But from this menu here, so from this menu, we want to construct that sidebar. So you look at it, we have this sidebar, which is the array of objects with the name for the text you want to show. Again, for that kind of a complex stuff, there's going to be the icon here. The icon that each one of them is going to display, if it's having it or not. Then if you look at this second one, as you can see, it has children, which is going to be something like this. So for the first one, it's just simple stuff. Second one too is simple. But if you look at the report, that one now, it have drop down, which is going to be something like this. So it have the name, about, the link, and again, it now have its own children. But the children too, you see that it follow the same pattern. So this one, what we have down here, is still the same thing as what we have here. So which means it's still the same component that's supposed to render them. Not that you start doing the stuff again and again and again yourself. No, it's one component that you are going to create, but that component can call itself to regenerate the nested items there. And in order for you to be able to do something like that, you need the power of this recursive function there, because it's just a function that can call itself. For example, here I have a function that is going to keep printing, or you want to do maybe Fibonacci. This is why one of the stuff they normally use there like that. But the time has, let me check. Yeah, so I don't want to add more to this class, but in the next class here, I'm going to, yeah, I should start with this recursive function. Then we talk about the current, because this is another important stuff that you're going to be using in React there or any other framework later on. When you need to pass event, or when you need to pass function into your callback, but this your function that you're passing, you need to supply some data into it first before it's going to be called later on, and you need to set some configuration down. So what do you need to do? You need to create a function that can return another function there, or a function that you are creating one function inside another function, and that function will have access to whatever data that is inside the parent. But we call it current, and I will explain it better in the next class there. So I will start with this recursive, and we can now use it to build just the simple side by not we're not going to install any React for now. We're just going to use our normal JavaScript, because we are focusing on JavaScript, and the same experience you have here, you can take it to any library that you want to use, whether it is React or it is Vue or anything. It's still going to, because all of them, they are JavaScript, and that experience you have from normal JavaScript, you can use it for anyone there. And that's why I don't want to focus with any library, just the normal JavaScript, so that you can carry that same experience into other framework there that you want to use. Yeah, so we're going to be starting with this current. We're going to build this our navbar. It's just going to be normal li, no too much of styling, but this stuff, based on the configuration we have here, it should be able to generate the li and the nested list for each one of them if there is children there. And we're not going to be doing this thing again and again by ourselves. We're not going to be using too much of stuff. What we'll do is to check, do you have children? If you have children, then call the function again to generate the data for that stuff. So the function, it's calling itself, and that function that calls itself, we call it recursive function, and we'll be talking more about it in the next class there. So that's going to be all.